and increasingly, it's a problem. Take Antioch, California, about 40 miles east of San Francisco. The town is home to about 17,000 strays, one cat for every 6 citizens. At the local animal shelter, Monica Helgamo is overwhelmed.
This one here obviously is saying, pet me, pet me. This cat here, see the ears go back? That's a feral cat.
Feral cats like this one are basically wild animals, and so they're not candidates for adoption.
We'll do what we can and see if we can find a place for her to go and live her life. If not, we're going to end up having to put her to sleep, euthanize her.
Antioch is typical. There are an estimated 80 million stray and feral cats in the U.S. Traditionally, the only way to deal with this overpopulation was to euthanize them. More than 1 million cats are killed in animal shelters every year. And that's made some cat lovers so mad, they've gotten organized.
Are you guys ready to save some more cats? Woo-hoo!
This is a national gathering of feral cat advocates near Washington, D.C. It's hosted by Alley Cat Allies. They run a network of 250,000 activists that fight for feral cats.
We changed the community. We brought neighbors together. We changed cat care forever.
Becky Robinson is the founder and president of Alley Cat Allies. She helped pioneer a population control method called Trap, Neuter, Return, or TNR. Instead of killing them, it's about sterilizing cats and letting them live the rest of their lives outdoors.
Trap, Neuter, Return for feral cats works, and what we mean when we say it works is that it stops the breeding of the cats, so there's no more litters of kittens.
In Antioch, Susan Smith shows me how Trap, Neuter, Return is done. She's supported by Alley Cat Allies, and she's trying to get the city to embrace TNR.
I'm gonna bait the trap with a little wet food, and then some tuna, some albacore.
The cats are spayed or neutered at a local clinic, given rabies shots, and the tips of their ears are removed to show that they've been fixed. Then, Smith returns them back to the streets where they were trapped. She continues to feed them in what are known as cat colonies. The feeding is key. Without it, she couldn't attract other cats in the area to trap them and get them fixed. TNR is catching on. More than 400 cities and counties have adopted this method over the past 25 years. Even pet products retailers have signed on, creating nonprofits that have donated tens of millions of dollars to TNR groups. Brian Cord has spent the last 5 years managing TNR grants for PetSmart charities.
PetSmart charities, in wanting to end cat overpopulation, has embraced Trap, Neuter, Return as the most effective way to make that happen.
TNR's expansion alarms wildlife conservation groups.
This is an emerging conservation crisis.
Grant Sizemore directs the invasive species programs at the American Bird Conservancy in Washington, D.C.
There were 0 domestic cats in North America in 1492, which means that we now have well over 100 million invasive predators roaming the landscape, killing wildlife.
Sizemore cites a study from the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute that estimates cats kill around 2.4 billion birds and 12.3 billion mammals every year. On Jekyll Island in southern Georgia, Dr. Sonia Hernandez and her research team are seeing this from the cat's perspective. They're putting cameras on cats.
So far, we've been able to color 31 cats. We know that a majority of them do hunt, despite the fact that they get fed.
The cat camera footage shows that even well-fed cats in TNR programs hunt anything they can get their paws on. They're just hardwired to hunt. And the food used to attract the cats and trap them also draws in other predators that can cause problems. Raccoons, skunks, and possums compete with the cats for food.
We want to be very careful that we don't encourage a lot of wildlife coming together, sharing pathogens, and then potentially bringing that to people.
Back in Antioch, California, public health concerns prompted the city to propose a ban on feeding cats on public property.
The cats are not the villains in this.
There was stiff opposition.
They don't deserve to starve. They deserve to have a right to live.
I'm not afraid of a cat urinating on my foot. I'm afraid of the meth heads that go around my building and threaten me.
Who's going over here?
Dr. Julie Levy is a professor of veterinary medicine and is considered the preeminent feral cat researcher in the country. She runs one of America's largest trap, neuter, return programs. It's called Operation Catnip, and it receives support from PetSmart charities.
I'm very confident we're going to see this nationally as a successful model for cat population control.
In many ways, Operation Catnip is the best case scenario for trap, neuter, return. It's well funded with a steady stream of volunteers. But when a population biologist analyzed Operation Catnip's numbers, the results came up short.
Cat populations were not significantly going down, and that's probably the single, take-home lesson here.
Dr. Patrick Foley teaches at California State University in Sacramento. He says there's no proof TNR reduces large populations of cats. They just reproduce too quickly.
Imagine introducing a single pregnant female cat to an island. She could produce 3 female kids plus herself by the end of the year. That means the population will multiply by 4 in 1 year. And next year, if the same thing happens, then there'll be 16. The year after that, 64. If you had money in the bank at that kind of rate, you would be delighted. You would, in fact, be owning the world after a very few years. And so would cats.
According to Foley's calculations, Operation Catnip would need to spay about 75% of the female cats in the county in order to make this work. That's roughly 10 times more than they're able to do right now. I asked Brian Cordes why PetSmart Charities is involved with a nationwide campaign when the research doesn't show that it works on large cat populations.
I'm totally comfortable with trap, neuter, return moving forward on a much larger scale than it has in the past, even though we don't have 100% scientific proof that's been peer-reviewed and published that it works on that large of a scale.
While Cordes remains committed to the trap, neuter, and return of feral cats, his employer is reconsidering. Since we recorded this interview with Cordes, PetSmart Charities announced late last year that it was laying off its entire staff. In a statement sent to us, a spokesperson said the organization is reassessing its programs, including its support of trap, neuter, return, but they will honor all existing grant commitments. Although one of the biggest funders of trap, neuter, return is having second thoughts, the feral cat movement continues to gain political clout. Last month, after a long standoff, Antioch's cat feeders prevailed. The city council granted Susan Smith and her allies the right to feed as part of an official trap, neuter, and return program.
Come on, babies.
When it comes to controlling cats, it's not only about science, it's about our emotions. And in the court of public opinion, it seems that America will always back the cat. For PBS NewsHour, I'm Aditya Sambamurthy in Antioch, California.
And earlier this week, I was in New York and spoke with Aditya Sambamurthy. As your piece points out, there's still some question about the effectiveness of this approach. So why are companies and charities putting money behind it?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one that I put to PetSmart Charities. And the response that I got is that the founders of the company want to end homelessness, cat homelessness. They want to end the euthanasia of cats in shelters, and they believe that this is the best approach. When you look at it through strictly a, animal rights, animal welfare perspective, I think there's something to be said for it. The problem is that at the city level, at the county level, when you're talking about many thousands of cats, the research just doesn't show that it's working at that level.
Okay, so let's talk about the societal impact. I mean, how significant of a problem is this in different communities?
The study that I reference is the University of Georgia's cat camera study, and what's really interesting here is that, even if you feed cats on a daily basis and you spay and neuter them, they're still going to go out and hunt. They're instinctual predators. The University of Georgia study shows that cats are not just killing mice and rats. They're killing, frogs, a surprising number of them, reptiles, amphibians, small mammals, and birds. And so if you have vulnerable species in your community, it's a problem.
Is there any way to domesticate a feral cat? I mean, if you catch them young enough?
Yeah, it's, I did that. I've adopted a kitten that was born to a feral mother, and he's doing really well, and he loves humans. So he's definitely tame now, but for adult feral cats, that's very rare, and it's not a policy prescription. We're not going to adopt our way out of this problem.
You talked a little bit about the long numbers. How do you ever get control of a population
Oh, you
that's
just gave it to me.
multiplying as quickly as these cats are?
It's really difficult. And, you know, the one thing that I found is that this is a largely volunteer-driven effort. The movement to, you know, sterilize these cats and put them back outside is largely driven by volunteers who are incredibly hardworking. They have jobs, they have families, and they do this work. Unfortunately, you know, as I'm finding, it's not proving to work at that scale. It's just a really difficult endeavor.
Aditya Samamurthy joining us from San Francisco, from Reveal and the Center for Investigative Reporting. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Hari.
For more on this story, visit Reveal, the investigative public radio show, at revealnews.org. Finally tonight, a NewsHour essay. What better way to battle discrimination than with